The first thing Armin Vale noticed was the silence, heavy, suffocating, unnatural for a place filled with people. It pressed against his chest like a weight he couldn't shrug off, like the universe itself was warning him that this night was going to go terribly wrong. The sunlight streaming through the tall glass windows of the upscale restaurant should have made everything feel warm and alive, but instead, it only highlighted how painfully awkward everything had become. Across from him sat a woman who hadn't smiled once in the last 20 minutes, who barely looked up from her phone, and who seemed more interested in anything else but him. For a man who had closed billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, this blind date was unraveling him in ways he didn't understand. If you believe that kindness and second chances can change lives, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs a little hope, and subscribe to Home with Dad for more powerful stories like this. Armin wasn't used to failure. As the CEO of a rapidly growing tech empire, he had built his life on control, precision, and results. Every meeting had a purpose. Every conversation led somewhere. But this felt like sitting in a storm with no direction. The woman across from him, Zara, had been recommended by a trusted colleague who insisted she was perfect. Perfect, however, was not the word Armin would have chosen. She spoke in clipped sentences when she spoke at all, her eyes occasionally flicking up, just long enough to assess him like a product she had already decided not to buy. The clinking of cutlery, the low hum of daytime chatter, and the distant laughter of other diners only made the tension at their table more unbearable. He found himself questioning everything, why he had agreed to this date, why he had allowed someone else to set him up, why he even cared. Perhaps it was because, deep down, he was tired of the emptiness that followed him home every night. Success had given him everything except the one thing he never admitted he needed: connection. But tonight, or rather, this bright, painfully honest afternoon, was proving that connection wasn't something you could schedule between meetings. Zara finally spoke, her voice flat and uninterested, mentioning something about how busy she was and how she didn't usually do this kind of thing. Armin nodded politely, though her words barely registered. His mind was already drifting, searching for an escape from the discomfort. He glanced around the restaurant, watching families share meals, couples laugh softly, and a father in the corner patiently feeding his young daughter while she giggled at something only she understood. That simple moment struck him harder than he expected, and then the waiter arrived. He was young, maybe early 30s, with tired eyes but a calm, steady presence. His uniform was simple, his movements practiced, but there was something different about him, something grounded. His name tag read Harris, and as he placed a glass of water in front of Armin, he offered a small, genuine smile. It wasn't the rehearsed politeness of customer service. It felt real, like he actually saw the people he was serving. Armin barely acknowledged him at first, still lost in his own thoughts. But Harris lingered for just a second longer than necessary, his gaze shifting briefly between Armin and Zara as if quietly assessing the situation. There was no judgment in his eyes, only understanding. Minutes passed and the tension only worsened. Zara checked her phone again, sighed, and muttered something about needing to leave soon. Armin felt a flicker of frustration rise within him, not at her, but at the entire situation. He was ready to end it, to politely excuse himself and return to the predictable world where he knew exactly who he was. That's when Harris returned. This time, he leaned in slightly as he set down the plates, his voice low enough that only Armin could hear. "If I were you, I'd stay." The words were simple, almost casual, but they carried a weight that caught Armin off guard. He looked up, surprised, meeting Harris's eyes for the first time. There was something there, something knowing, something quietly urgent. Before Armin could respond, Harris straightened and walked away as if nothing had happened. For a moment, Armin just sat there, confused. Why would a waiter say something like that? What could he possibly know about this situation? And yet, the words lingered in his mind, echoing softly. He glanced again at the father and daughter in the corner. The little girl had dropped her spoon, and the father patiently picked it up, wiping it clean with a napkin before handing it back to her with a gentle smile. There was a softness in that moment, a kind of love that didn't need words, something shifted inside Armin. Zara was speaking again, her tone sharper now, as if she had already decided the outcome of this date. But instead of retreating, Armin found himself doing something unexpected. He listened, not just to her words, but to the spaces between them. He noticed the subtle tension in her posture, the way her fingers tapped anxiously against the table, the faint shadow of exhaustion behind her eyes. Maybe this wasn't just a bad date. Maybe it was two people carrying their own unseen burdens, colliding at the wrong moment. He leaned forward slightly, his voice softer than before, and asked her a genuine question, not about her job or her schedule, but about what she actually enjoyed, what made her feel alive. For the first time, Zara paused, really paused. Her eyes lifted from her phone, and something in her expression changed. The conversation didn't transform instantly, but it shifted, slowly, carefully, like ice beginning to melt. Zara spoke a little more, her answers less guarded. Armin shared a little about himself, not the polished version he presented to the world, but the quieter truths, the long nights, the loneliness, the pressure of always having to be the strong one. Time passed without him noticing, and then something unexpected happened. The little girl from the corner table wandered over, clutching her stuffed toy. She looked up at Armin with innocent curiosity, her eyes wide and unafraid. "Are you sad?" she asked, her voice soft but direct. Armin blinked, caught completely off guard. Before he could respond, her father hurried over, apologizing profusely and gently guiding her back. But the question lingered in the air, raw and unfiltered. "Are you sad?" For the first time in a long time, Armin didn't have an immediate answer. Harris passed by again, and this time, their eyes met with a quiet understanding. There was no need for words. Somehow, that brief whisper had already changed something. The rest of the afternoon unfolded differently. Not perfectly, not magically, but honestly. Zara admitted she had almost canceled the date. Armin admitted he had considered leaving. They both laughed, awkwardly at first, then more freely. It wasn't a love story blooming in an instant, but it was something real, something human. As they prepared to leave, Zara thanked him, not in the polite, distant way she had started the date, but sincerely. There was warmth in her voice now, a hint of something that hadn't been there before. Armin stayed behind for a moment, watching her walk out into the sunlight. He felt lighter, though he couldn't fully explain why. He turned to find Harris clearing a nearby table. "Why did you say that?" Armin asked quietly. Harris paused, then smiled faintly. "Because sometimes, the worst moments are the ones that matter most. People leave too quickly. They don't realize what they're walking away from." There was a depth in his words that made Armin curious, and so he asked. Harris shared, not in dramatic detail, but in quiet fragments. He was a single father. His wife had left years ago, and he had been raising his son alone while working long shifts at the restaurant. There were days he wanted to give up, moments when everything felt overwhelming, but he stayed. For his son, for the hope that things could get better, for the belief that even small moments mattered. "I've seen a lot of people come and go here," Harris said. "Some of them regret leaving. Some of them wish they had stayed just a little longer." Armin listened, truly listened, and something inside him shifted again. Before leaving, he did something unexpected. He handed Harris his card, not as a CEO offering charity, but as one human reaching out to another. "If you ever need anything," he said simply. Days turned into weeks. Armin couldn't forget that afternoon. Not the awkwardness, not the whisper, not the quiet strength in Harris's story. He reached out, not out of obligation, but out of genuine respect. What started as a simple conversation turned into something more. Armin helped Harris find a better job, one with stable hours, better pay, and time to spend with his son. But, more importantly, they became friends. Zara, too, stayed in his life, not as a perfect romance, but as someone who understood the importance of trying, of showing up even when things felt uncertain. And Armin? He began to change. He started noticing the small things, the laughter of children, the quiet struggles of strangers, the moments that didn't make headlines but shaped lives in profound ways. He realized that success wasn't just about numbers and achievements. It was about connection, compassion, and the courage to stay when it was easier to walk away. If this story has touched your heart in any way, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder of hope, and subscribe for more stories that remind us what truly matters. And before we reach the end, here's something special. Drop a comment below and tell us about a moment when you almost walked away, but decided to stay. Your story might inspire someone else more than you realize. The next time Arman returned to that resto,